Hello, people. We need to leave zero. Excuse me. We need to leave zero gravity alone. And by the way, hyper intelligence is way better than artificial intelligence. In other words, they don't have time to program. They have to sense things to be able to program them. In other words, and they have American history using our founders' words, leaving out what they declassified about that, leaving out what nature itself declassifies about that too. No one had free speech. Everyone too, to an extent, they had to pretend other. Otherwise, that body was sensed through the breaching method, but through everyone else for the breaching method. They had forced self-valued rules with the bridge sciences. See how much time do they have? They have these debates about things like that. In other words, they're putting sexual things before the kids are even like in grammar school. They're putting sexual things with kids. They're taking them away from and they're slandering them on a mass scale. Look at the people with the Diddy trial. There are people involved with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with a whole bunch of people tied to his co-defendants and their family members before and after the World Trade Center attack. They have been sticking predicate acts with facts and databases, forcing child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, right around the kids of the interbranch and foreign at the same time. They're a bunch of little fakes with differences. The forgiveness is because they are used remotely. Campuses A through Z. You guys aren't searching the nature of debate. And they have, in other words, the reason that you seem disgusting. I don't even say what it is because it's disgusting. What runs the prisons? Oh, that's because we want it to be hard because against crime. They have all kinds of predicate acts with facts, way worse than the kids and adults they're putting in prisons, with the names at the corrections offices and the judicial branch offices, names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, running into high lie progressions, all ages and natures of campuses with the names next to them, including medical campuses and fire campuses, fire departments, family members, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, roles, all running into high lie progressions. Some of the people on marked police forms or whatever that difference is used remotely. They're putting fake transcripts on a mass scale. Even with WFSB, Channel 3 News, Connecticut, they have me to fake conversations with themselves and others. Increasingly, they have all kinds of natures of organized crimes with people with the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices of Connecticut who have all kinds of rules with identity theft, fraud, slanders, every little fake punk in the world. That's because that's why they can't speak. They use their own differences, other people's differences. They're speaking through the law, through campuses abridged. They have our founders communicated for us to understand how a breaching method used black and white reassigned. Black pupils, white survivors, revelations reassigned. We are systems tactical ulterior from the one that communicates to us with differences, with the difference of a species, individual species bodies, individual species. Every individual species body is made up of a whole bunch of different bodies, of individual bodies, with all group differences generated by that which is generated on the species too. We're shown to an extent the body of all space/existence, the identity of nature, its complete identity. So, in other words, but get me off the fake conversations with WFSB about the World Trade Center attack. They've asked me to fake conversations with themselves and with others. That's mixed natures of organized crimes. And they attacked me and others who were in the World Trade Center context in Manhattan, New York. This is a Connecticut news location. And their roles with the intelligence next to them, the difference of their guilt with that. And interbranch have been forging and switching names and sequences, and with ones with the court next to the World Trade Center towers right before the attack. A bunch of people tied to Diddy and Usher and the campuses and their roles with celebrities, everything they do. In other words, it's not debatable that they are still being and have been used remotely. Little fake punks at locations, areas, and states, identities of law, only 3 branches of government. Forgiveness is so we could not leave out how they were being a whole bunch of different countries at the same time with them. Get me off of fake conversations with Channel 3 News and with others. And about, because I'm one of the people from Connecticut who's in the, saw them. This is after the World Trade Center attack too, but they recorded themselves with the Saudi attackers through how our countries have all roles with the campuses together. A bunch of people with Central Connecticut State University. There's a Parker English. If he's the one who was on Walker Hill Road in Wethersfield, a bunch of military people, foreign and domestic, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and child abusers, leaders of the kids, proven first force, years apart, have roles with him on that street. If he tied himself to me. He put fake things. He made a fake quick exception outside the classroom. He put fake things about he's a logic guy. But see, they have delusions too. And they have all kinds of people from Harvard Hospital involved with him and with the campuses, intercities. And with like a whole bunch of people in the military, I don't know their names, foreign and domestic. Some of them I do, Eric Burgess, a Mark Violet, a Justin Levinskis. And he brought up the names of next to the guy with the body dumping spots. In other words, for other things. These are people also with judges, prosecutors, and their family members who have time collusions with the child abusers, leaders of kids. And ones then years later, as adults, had roles forcing the principal child abuser. They put fake ties to me with the news at the same time. And they have all kinds of wire crime acts and methods, the FBI. So this is way better than Doge. They've been stealing all kinds of money. But more importantly is how they've been used remotely at countries. Right through world wars, psychology was criminally foreign impulse, tactical delusions, raw, natures of logic and reason. So I don't mean to go hard on Elon Musk, because people go hard on people for fake motivations and reasons. But it's serious. You need to stay out of, we need to stop playing with zero gravity. It's just thinking about going to another planet we have right here. We have Earth's a special difference. Otherwise, it is forced from here. The only reason there are self-value roles for the force from here, even when there are other real reasons. They're juxtaposed with where and how. A hyperforeign used northern colonies and southern colonies, sickly distinctly, but non-distinctly too. It used them roles non-distinctly with its breaching method that had slavery even had overt roles with replacing what nature communicates to us, revelation. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. There are other species bodies that also have two eyes. They have quality aspects of nature, distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous, but also for that further identity of value progression. That is not us. It is not them. But it's all things anyway. Many pray. But now also because the campuses have been criminally foreign influence, tactically, delusions raw, collusion /S with that which would no one wanted collusions with. At locations, areas, and states, everywhere they are, everywhere the human species body has a body standing. But the breaching method made exceptions for that, without anyone fathoming. In other words, when everyone's being a knave, well, I don't have time for that. In other words, that's why individuals' voices are attacked or helped insidiously. Criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments. There are collusions with that to keep the quality of action nature necessary to discern the breaching method, replaced right from the communications of James Madison, of our founders. We are supposed to refer to our founders plural as James Madison, the individual person, but understanding that there were founders behind him plural, and see president /chief. And nature itself shows us to appreciate Native Americans as our founders. That coupled with James Madison and the founders to the extent we know about them, it was more than him. And then they went and got George Washington counter-extorted and agreeing to help to them and to use that plan to counter-extort the other founders and to force them to an extent to break the torture, extortion, slavery laws against themselves and against everyone other Oh, it's against themselves, but everyone else. Why wouldn't they just attack it? Why wouldn't they just bring? Because they were hurt. They were sensed then if they did that. Even if there were a majority of people trying to do it. Our founders communicated for us to understand this. They didn't want anything to do with slavery. No one knows how to defend our founders because you guys had their words used, leaving out the breaching method. That's why, in other words, all bullshit and music in the background. All this talk and no one's speaking about predicate acts like facts, like I am here, black people. There is a predicate acts with facts delivery system method that has been entrenched here. And it is exploited when we address it as that, or the difference of it as that, or as a criminal insidious nature delivery system method. So we need to address too criminal insidious natures of order, calmness, positive value treatments, abridged. We're supposed to be and stay led by, and stay being led by the hyper invisible but still discernible, how it is distinct from the invisible but still discernible. How we could discern if the smallest finite details left out, let alone that grouped active details and simultaneous, like with black people's rights of eyes. In other words, please, Doge. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has the Facebook page, pages of campuses, plural, involved also with the principal upskirt Nature's campus. And more people involved with Joshua Julian. I never had a campus with him, never saw him inside a campus in my life, never had anything to do with him. He's been involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with intelligence families, involved on my street with a Phil Cololo and some officers switching and forging names. And a whole bunch of officers and courts family members too, switching, forging names. And I caught them. And I knew that they were going to have to put fake things in databases. Or where I know in databases. I mean, I knew that I was going to catch them. I could force them onto writing. They just, in other words, so I forced people to call the police without telling them why. And they didn't want to do it. So I forced them verbally and just consistently, aggressively, so that I could put fear in them. Too. In other words, this Kevin Dillon. This Kevin Dillon came on my street, was trying to put fear on me, and with people involved with them with some untimely deaths, and some more child abusers years apart involved with this Kevin Dillon. He's got an Anna Dillon involved, and how she uses sometimes Anna Dillon, how sometimes Annie Dillon, and her roles with multiple real estate agencies, and a son of a leasing agent. Involved with that and with fire departments, the FBI, and courts, prosecutors, judges, their family members, people on Covington Street, involved with whiting forensics too. On all sides of Central Connecticut State University, has all kinds of predicate acts, all kinds of organized crimes, acts and methods, and roles with intelligence that are, it's a truth, they have roles on organized crimes, but they broke those laws. But that, in other words, forgiveness is so we can focus on the predicate acts because there are other countries involved. This is right where and how no one wants collusions, except it makes exceptions. Oh, but that's our job. No, they're on mass evidences racketeering worse than war crimes at probate courts. Like with elderly homes throughout the country. You guys look and think those are our means? The suburbs were designed tactically denatured for a torture, fact-cheating nature, extortion, and slavery method. Northern colonies, southern colonies, sickly non-distinctly, not just sickly distinctly. And we have not paid attention to that because everyone's too busy paying attention to bullshit and fake things. This method, this measures and maintains everyone only capable of speaking about principles, abridged from how nature communicates with principles. By what is true always. We don't leave out the smallest finite detail, but per its system, not per our own. For what it wants us to contemplate, how it wants us to think. So we have not addressed too with our founders. We don't have the right anyone allowing us to speak with nature itself and what our founders communicated about the overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Why have we had to entertain that originally and still? all groupings of humanity too, as groupings, tactical ulterior from how nature wants us to appreciate groupings and simultaneous. So we could. It's about the hyper simultaneous. English was revealed to be taught this way, in other languages. In other words, we need to bring our. The only reason it's self-evident because they're using them remotely. Predicate acts with facts, needs, nature, styles. You guys are just ignoring me online. You have rules with judges and prosecutors that are showing they can't get onto paper legitimately because there are all kinds of rackets that are sick. To heal them, we have to start. No, each age of fact, nature. You guys have the principles reversed. You have the shell game too, with the people with the sexual groups and agenda, and the people trying to counter it. All that time too. Then spend a whole bunch of time talking about what to do about shooters and security, and the security had roles right through it. FBI's got all kinds of war crime, worse than criminal competence, black people. They have war crime acts and methods. The people that work with telephones. In other words, not one presidency has been unabridged. Not one presidency has allowed us to speak honestly about because they're being shown fake transcripts too. Get me off the fake transcripts. Wethersfield police pretended conversations with me as a kid, now as an adult. Yeah, you guys have audacity to pretend you're having a legitimate debate regarding artificial intelligence. And like Facebook has rules with the Facebook page of Highcrest School and of other schools, and further with the Board of Education, further with sexual and medical offenders years apart. And we get this Leahy family too off the fake conversations with me too. A whole bunch of people with the Institute of Living on Harvard Hospital's campus have roles with WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News, and people next to Fox Connecticut News, and next to WTNH, but which is the FBI. But also with their sources, WTNH has roles at corners of streets all along Route 175 and its conjunctions. And other lane, with corners of streets is manifest from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield and next to them. They have other communicated for those founding locations that our founders communicated for that. You guys are pretending that you guys are having the people work with databases that are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions drop because of the campuses. The difference of homeschool too. Then they want to have a debate about math. People aren't learning math, not because, in other words, they need to follow mandated law first. They still have the private criminal enterprises, the difference of their guilt or their overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists. They even have criminal enterprises and the family members of fire departments, people who answer phones for things. They're mass fake phone transcripts of people that work for the phone companies involved with the intelligence families. They're mixed criminally foreign influence. They never had an identity. Not one branch of government, not one service person, where and how it counts. You guys need to follow mandated law and get me off fake conversations. That's the first thing. Those are predicate acts. They're refusing to identify themselves and get on paper into branch because they've been sticking fake things in there with the federal agencies too. We're going to go into the other agencies, plural too, because they brought it up with a Kelly Kazmarek. Never had a class with her in my life. Never saw her in my life. She's one of the ones on Facebook who brought up the CIA. And people involved with that have roles with some body dumping spots, untimely deaths, and murders, and threats and confessions that were brought up at the same time intercities as ones increasingly involved before the World Trade Center attack with the FBI and courts and their family members and intimate ties planting evidences before the World Trade Center attack. And then after it, a whole bunch of people tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. He has rules with an officer hunter, or who they said is an officer hunter, at Central Connecticut State University and Hartford courts, also with a Dean Judd and his kids. A whole bunch of people that intercities and intra-cities tied to Central Connecticut State University, and as ones involved with UConn too, with foreign and domestic military, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. That's not made up. That's what it is. You guys have black people's rights of eyes, communications replaced. I'm talking about you guys, the ones who are in the background, not following mandated law and making excuses. And they're putting fake transcripts in databases and change ones. You guys need to get them on paper, one name and sequence. In other words, they can't even explain civil wars legitimately. How are they going to explain wars? Plus, they have roles with the Afghan leaders and kids, with Wethersfield town offices involved with the World Trade Center attack, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, roles with investigations, investigators used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions raw. Get them on paper, one name and sequence now, they bridges.